Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm so excited to welcome back Carole Obley to the podcast today. You might have listened to my podcast with her years ago about Akashic Records reading. She even did a live reading for me that I put on the podcast. But Carole is a seasoned medium spiritual teacher and author of the beautiful new book, The Art of Sensing, a guide for staying true to your soul's journey through challenging times. What I love about this episode today is that we dig deep and really tease apart the difference between everyday intuition and soul intuition and thought. And I think that this is so difficult for people often to understand, even when they're having these experiences of how to understand, how do I know that's just not my mind talking to me? How do I know that's a message from my soul? So I think that this is such a critical conversation that we're having right now, as so many people are feeling so disconnected from themselves, from the community, from the world. It's a great invitation to tune back into your own soul. So with that, here's today's episode with Carole Obley.
We need at our table of awareness the logician, but equally we need the intuitive, we need the mystic.
I almost died. I was allowed to go to the very precipice of death, of life and death, and look over the edge. And I was allowed to behold what was there and allowed to come back. Most people aren't.
When we talk about being aligned with ourself or being aligned with our soul or hearing our higher self, that's really what we're talking about, is being connected to that divine part of ourself, that light-filled part of us that is connected to God energy, that is connected to everybody here and every experience we've ever had.
If more doctors, more professionals can open up to use intuitive gifts in their work, that's really important.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, mediumship, near-death experiences, consciousness, and what it all means. Welcome back, Carole, to Life, Death, and the Space Between.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
I think I always joke with people who have been on the show more than twice that they should get like the Saturday Night Live jacket, like the, 5-year jacket or something, the 5-time jacket or whatever it is. So I'm so excited to have you back. I had you on years ago and we talked a lot about the Akashic Records, but I'm having you back on today because you have a new book out called The Art of Sensing. And I think this is so important, and really I want to dig into this around how we are picking up on these different subtle energies. Because I think that so often people think, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't tap into this. I'm not hearing anything. I'm not getting anything. I'm not understand, maybe messages are coming, but I'm not really tapped into them. So let's start with kind of what brought this book about for you.
It happened because of my observations of consciousness, particularly in the last several years, the last 4 years, the Great Divide, chaos, confusion. And I wanted to offer something to bring some sort of solace to people so that they could understand that the resource of finding peace, guidance, and direction is not out there somewhere in the outside world, in the external environment, but it's within each person. And so the sensing that I'm referring to here in The Art of Sensing is intuition, which is the voice of the soul. And we've kind of all heard that expression, the still small voice. And I feel it's also really important for people, and I've done many years of teaching of mediumship development and intuition development. People get very frustrated with something like meditation because they feel as if they're not doing it right. or they're not getting, visions, and they're not hearing things. And so I really wanted to demystify what intuition is, particularly, and I make this distinction in the book, uh, sort of like garden variety intuition, which is perfectly valid, and we all have that. And then spiritual intuition of learning to first open the connection to the voice of your own soul, which is a constantly navigating you onto the good pathway of what the soul planned before coming here. And secondly, trusting that, so that you perceive it, but then you also, and this is why I named the middle section of the art of sensing, surrender, to trust that direction.
So when you say garden variety intuition versus spiritual intuition, and I actually had a question about this, distinguishing between intuition and thought. Can you differentiate? Can you break that down for us a little further? Because that's confusing even for me, who plays in this space.
Sure. So with garden variety, what I simply mean is what most people have experienced, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have experienced this. You walk into a room, maybe you haven't been there before, and you get some sort of a feeling about it. Does it feel good? Does it feel comfortable? Do I feel relaxed here? That would be one example of sort of this garden variety intuition that we all have. Another example would be I'm driving to work in the morning, and suddenly I get this very intense feeling. You need to take a different pathway to work. And there's no external validation of that. I can't reach out and look and go, oh, there's something going on here that can validate that. But then later on, so I switch my direction, and later on I find out there was a very bad accident on the road that I normally take to work. So it's sort of I believe this is a sense that human beings have had since the beginning of when we've been on this earth, for protection, for navigation. Animals have never lost this ability, and they don't question it like a lot of us do.
Right.
Animals, if they sense danger coming, or some other thing that's going to affect their well-being, they will move away from it, or they will make appropriate adjustments.
Right. I think the best example of that is always the tsunami. I always think of that
Yeah.
that all the animals kind of scurried up
Yes.
the hills into the hillside, knowing that something was coming.
Yeah. So it's sort of, what just regular intuition. And all intuition, you're never going to be able to point to external validating facts. That's the difference between the rational mind, or what we operate in most of the time, what we use to balance our checkbook. Language is connected to the rational mind. So it's different in that we can't point to facts that are going to back up what we're feeling, what we're sensing.
Okay, so that you would say is the everyday intuition.
Yes.
Right. So what is then the spiritual intuition?
Spiritual intuition is, I have some sort of a challenge going on in my life. Say that it's with relationships. Say that it's with, I've lost my job. And this is why the subtitle of the book has the word challenges in it. Following that voice of your soul to navigate challenges that we all will experience in life more smoothly. So it's stepping onto the whispering of the pathway of the soul, and following that courageously. And, the door closes. Let's take the example of I've lost my job. So we might stew for a while. We might be angry. We might have a lot of different emotions, confusion. Why did this happen? Sadness, grief, particularly if we've had the job, we've attached to it or identified with it for a long time. And so where do we go from there to gain some sort of direction or comfort? And so the soul is always speaking to us, but we have to open that channel in order to receive that and to be able to use it to eliminate fear. Fear is a big one. I see so much of this today. I write in The Art of Sensing about the predominance today of anxiety and fear. And particularly I've observed in young people, loss of connection with purpose. That's a big one. That's a big one.
Do you think that has to do with loss of connection of the soul? Like that because we are so maybe focused on like the wrong things that the soul has sort of separated. I know you talk a little bit about the difference between the soul, the personality, and the ego, that maybe we've become more kind of ego driven and the disconnection from the soul then.
100%. Because the ego operates in a completely different reality than the soul. In no way am I demonizing the ego. That is why, personally, I have really come out of a lot of New Age type of philosophy, because I felt that a lot of the New Age teachings really demonize the ego. Mm-hmm. And secondly, really make feelings a bad thing. And they're not.
Right.
They're
and
not.
The ego is not bad either.
Absolutely not. We need it to, it is just as important as anything else that we have. But it is not the authentic identity of who we truly are. We have a personality, which is an extension of the ego. That's what makes us a unique human being. Mm-hmm. And that, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Thinking, and people tend to, I put myself in this category before I had sort of a nervous breakdown and was forced to learn an 8-week course of mindfulness. We tend to get on the treadmill of the rational mind, which, goes over and over the same spaces. And that's what creates anxiety. Can also rumination, and over focusing on the past creates depression. So the soul, and this is the important distinction with soul intuition, spiritual intuition. It's right here, right now. It's not in the past. It's not in the future. The ego operates in those constructs of time. We know that time is really an artificial construct. It's not bad. We need it. We absolutely need the reference of time for convenience to maintain our life. But the soul operates in a timelessness that is immortal, eternal, and indestructible.
So how do we differentiate in our mind when we're receiving the spiritual intuition versus everyday, would you call it intuition or thought? Like how are the subtleties? Can you tease that apart for me even more? Like if I'm sitting in a meditation, is that automatically spiritual intuition when those messages come in, or could it be more of that everyday feeling?
Well, I think there is a fine line. Usually, in my experience of doing spiritual readings for people for 3 decades now, people turn to wanting to find their soul guidance in times of trouble, in times of transition. As a matter of fact, in The Art of Sensing, there's an entire chapter I wrote entitled The Bridge. And the bridge is symbolic for the phenomena of transition, moving from point A to point B. And I'm talking now in terms of consciousness. Point A, if we can visualize a bridge, most people know what that looks like. It can be any way you want it to look. But there's one side of that bridge, and that's sort of our space that we're accustomed to. And we start to get feelings or promptings that something needs to change. And particularly, that usually happens when we have a crisis in life, a divorce, a serious illness, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, the loss of friendships, that create sort of this crisis point. And if we can be gut honest, which is required in any type of transition, we can start to follow that guidance of our soul. And a lot of times, again, it's going to seem, it will feel sort of like I can't put my finger on it. I don't have the external validation, but I feel as if I need to go this way. And sometimes the soul will communicate to us and say, just be still for a while. Things don't happen in our timing. Now, if we go to everyday intuition, I used the example earlier about we walk into a room. So it can be the same with perhaps meeting a person that we've, a stranger that we've never come in contact with before. And right away, as soon as we come into that person's presence, we get a sense of, do I feel relaxed with them? Are they open? Are they closed? Are they friendly? What do I feel? And an important aspect of this too is, you've heard this expression, I have a gut feeling. Okay, we've all heard that.
Right.
And it's really accurate, and I'll tell you why. Because the energy centers, of which there are 7 main energy centers in the body, they're called chakra. Chakra is from the Sanskrit, which means spinning wheel. And they sort of interpenetrate the physical body. They're made of energy. And their purpose is to distribute life force energy throughout the physical body. The gut chakra is called the solar plexus. So that is a very important energy center that we exchange that sort of gut level communication with other people and with the environment. So, that is constantly operating. If we get, sometimes people will get chills, they'll get goosebumps. That's another sign of knowing some sort of truth through everyday intuition. And so people really, I think a lot of times we end up dismissing that. And then I've talked to many, many people, myself included, who regret that, not paying attention to that. There's red flags, let's say.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely been there before. So how much do you think it requires for someone to be able to recognize these subtle shifts in their ability to sense these things? Like, what does it entail to get there?
It's been a while since I've talked to you about what I'm up to. I want to first start by thanking so many of my supporters who have supported me on Patreon and in my Circle community. What's so exciting now is we have my new Circle community up and running, where if you want to contribute to supporting the podcast, you can do so at different levels for different values. So head on over to my Circle group. You can actually find the link in the show notes below. And there's opportunities to continue to support the podcast. And I have to say, Your support of the podcast is frankly what has kept this podcast going over time. I have been funding the podcast solely by myself. I get a little bit of money in advertising dollars, but not a lot. So anything that you can give, if you have found value in this podcast, and it's not just giving without anything back, I will give back to you. You will be a part of this community with opportunities for discounts and conversations and ask Amy anythings. But it's a great opportunity for you to support what hopefully has helped you over the many, many years. Also, there's so many other ways now that you can work with me. I am offering a group course called Live Your Life Backwards, which is finishing its first cohort this winter and has been absolutely incredible. There's retreats coming up. There's workshops. There's one-on-one sessions with me. So many options that we can work together. So make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to my podcast, and make sure you're subscribed to my newsletter, where you will get a free soul wisdom workbook to help you dig deeper into the virtues that you want to be living in this lifetime. We all need so much more spirituality now. We are in a spiritual crisis, and I'm giving you so many tools to tap into your own spirituality. So check out, and don't forget to subscribe to Life, Death, and the Space Between so you never miss an episode.
It entails a dedication to go into the residence of the soul, which is stillness. And the easiest way, and I mean, when I say easy, I mean a child can do this. And, our mind tends to overcomplicate things. But to reach the soul, you simply need to sit quietly. Don't do this when you're driving. But close your eyes and focus on your breath. The breath is always available, or we wouldn't be here. And follow it into on the inhalation as it comes into the body, and then as it exits on the exhalation. And allow the breath to pull you two places. Number one, into the present moment. Number two, into that sacred still place within. And the important thing people need to know to reach that domain of their own soul is that initially it might feel like, well, nothing's happening. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not, being shown an image, or I'm not hearing anything or feeling anything. That's correct. That's the soul. Now, the other big problem I've had in many years of teaching people how to do this is that people say, I can't stop my mind from thinking.
Right. I hear that a lot.
You will never stop the mind from thinking, because it's doing what it was designed to do, and that is to generate thought. So what we have to do in mindfulness, reaching the soul, feeling that stillness, feeling peace, is to notice the thoughts as they come up, but to become the observer of them. I know a lot of people, probably a lot of your listeners, have heard this, and maybe they are still struggling with it. I know I did for a period of time. So I'm going to give a very simple analogy to help people with that. And it is, imagine that you're lying on your back in your yard or in a park on a nice summer day, and you're looking up at the sky and you see clouds, fluffy white clouds passing by. And imagine that those are your thoughts. And so you're lying on that grass and you're simply observing those clouds, and you're watching them as they move across that sky. But you're not sort of, reaching up to lasso them and bring them to you. You're simply noticing them. That's how we can deal with thought. And thought is in no way bad. Feelings are in no way negative or bad. But we also can transcend those or go above those to reach the domain of the soul. Because the soul simply is. It doesn't have an agenda. It's simply an expression of our real being, or real with a capital R.
So Okay, let me ask you this. I'm going to try to bring this into an example from me because that's always how I understand things best. So if I'm sitting in meditation and I can tell when my mind shifts out of like kind of everyday thought into more soul thought. But sometimes those soul thoughts are about everyday things. Does that mean that they're everyday thoughts? Like sometimes I feel like I'll hear, okay, here's the next 3 steps you need to take in order to do
Oh,
X, Y, and Z. Is that a soul thought or is that an everyday thought?
no, I would say that that is a soul thought of moving closer towards the realization of whatever you're wanting to accomplish. And it's
Okay.
interesting that you said, what are the next 3 things that I need to do to, accomplish whatever.
Right.
In my very early training at Delphi, we were trained when we went into meditation with that very thing that you just said.
Mm,
For example, what are the first 3 things I must do now to bring more love into my life, to be
mm-hmm.
able to express love more profoundly? What are the first 3 things that I need to do to heal my relationship? And so I think it's very useful and helpful to people to ask for that, and the soul will answer.
Mm-hmm.
I do recommend too when you're doing these, and that they don't have to be long. I mean, 5 minutes morning and evening, to have a journal or something there that you can write these things down in.
Yeah, I always get so excited when I get the messages. I think I'm going to forget them. And then it kind of snaps me right out of that soul. Like it takes me probably 10 minutes to kind of quiet the mind enough to move into, and I almost feel like a door slides open, like my brain sort of gets pushed aside, like the left side of my brain gets pushed aside and the right side opens up more, and then the information
Mm.
starts coming in. But then when the information starts coming in, I'm like, oh no, what if I forget this? And then the door seems to slide closed again, and then I have to like write down what I'm doing or what the messages that were given to me, and then I come out of that soul connected space.
Well, the people will receive this. There isn't just one way to receive this sort of guidance. In my early days of doing mediumship, I actually had a little handheld tape recorder, and I would speak into it when I was getting perceptions. When I was doing my meditation, I would actually speak into this little tape recorder of the information that I was being given. So, that's an option. Sometimes now, with me personally, I get messages from my soul when I'm just walking around. When I'm out gardening, I was out pulling weeds last night, and I'm getting, sometimes I will get some insights. These are insights, and I might add that another distinguishing quality of spiritual intuition versus our everyday intuition is that it's always going to be something beneficial for you. It's never going to be negative. If you're hearing a negative, well, you need to go tell that person off, or for example, that's not the soul. That's
That's a
not the
thought. That's the
soul.
ego.
That would be the ego, which is
Mm-hmm.
always sort of couched in defensiveness
Mm-hmm.
or protectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So it will feel, and here's another gauge: the guidance from your soul will feel expansive, and this is why it's so important to for people to practice this, just so you start to recognize when you're in that space, that expansive space. What does that feel like?
Mm-hmm.
Versus my little mind, my limited mind, which is perfectly valid, as I said earlier, but the soul operates in a very different perspective. So it operates in unlimited capability.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it's necessary to surrender and to trust, because it's going to sound very foolish maybe at times, like, well, I can't do that, or that doesn't make any sense. And I'm not in any way advocating anyone do something really stupid or foolish, but just sort of take note of that and, what you're being told by your soul. And then also see if that comes through to you in different ways. For example, a message from someone else. Someone else tells you the same thing, or you read something. This is what I just heard. That's happened to me so many times. So the synchronicity or meaningful coincidence of the messages can point us in the correct direction.
Mm-hmm. And then let's take it one step further to mediumship. So then it's the soul of the loved one of the other person that is then communicating with you.
If we're talking about mediumship, yes. And what occurs is mediumship can only happen when there is a blending of the spirit communicator, the soul in spirit, who is no longer in the physical realm, and my soul as a medium. Now, I also want to add to this, you do not have to be a professional medium to receive that blending from your loved ones. That can happen, and I'll tell you how. It's through the bond of love. The bond of love is the strongest force in the entire universe. But with mediumship, yes, I mean, if I'm reading for a complete stranger, which I never ask any questions beforehand, because I'm very genuine and skilled with mediumship. I tell people, I'll tell you exactly who I'm perceiving. I can never guarantee the presence of anyone here. But the blending occurs. It has to, or I wouldn't know anything about, that disembodied spirit in heaven. So their consciousness, I become aware of it. It's blending with mine, and that's how it occurs.
Got it. Okay. I want to shift focus here because there were a couple things that came up in your book that I think are really important for people to hear. One is you talk a little bit about what it means to be a spiritual teacher. And I think right now, in a time where there's so many people putting themselves out there as spiritual teachers, spiritual healers, gurus, what does it mean to you to really be a spiritual teacher? And what should people be looking for if they're seeking out more spirituality in their life?
Yeah, I wrote that chapter in The Art of Sensing, or that section about spiritual teachers, because people need to know. It can help people avoid a lot of deception or suffering or pain. Over the years, I've personally observed disingenuous teachers. And those are people who are not walking the walk of what they're espousing, with the spiritual teachings. A spiritual teacher cannot give you anything that you do not already have within you, because you have it all. A teacher is only going to reflect to you some sort of a signpost on your own pathway. And anybody who professes to make you wealthy, to make you suddenly in a month's time enlightened, or, you're going to get the relationship that you want, or, the job that you want, run away, because no one can do those things for you. And I think there's, just as I've noticed, and Dr. Amy, you were saying you've seen a lot of teachers out there. I, over the last decade, have seen so many people who are claiming to be mediums now.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you from my own journey, it takes years to be a very genuine and self-confident medium who is genuinely, helping people by connecting them with not only their deceased loved ones, but the reality of the eternity and expansiveness of their own soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think, thank you for bringing this up, because I believe it is very important that people use discernment in choosing whose courses they take, who they might connect with for a reading. The other thing I've noticed is these exorbitant fees with things. That should not be going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That should be a red flag.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I understand the concept of supply and demand. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
But when I start seeing mediums charging $800 and $900 for a session, I mean, you're very much limiting perhaps even people that genuinely want help, but they can't afford that.
Right. Right.
So yeah, it's very important to a good way to find the best way to find a good spiritual teacher or a medium is through word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
referencing. I have gotten more. I've written 5 books now. People connect with me because of my books, but most people connect with me even out of state. I read nationally and internationally because they've heard that somebody got a good experience
Right.
with a session.
Right. Right. Which makes sense. You want to know that the medium that you're working with is that other people have perhaps been able to connect with their loved ones through that person. What do you think? Why do you think people are seeking more spiritual meaning now?
We are we meaning the collective of humanity. We are at a pivotal point. We are at a crossroads. Um, I also include a chapter in the art of sensing, by the way, of the birth chart and how that is a map of the
Mm-hmm.
soul. And so I will simply mention here that the planet Pluto has shifted out of the sign of Capricorn into the sign of Aquarius. There is a huge difference between those two zodiac signs. uh, Aquarius is more about the collective of humanity and
Mm-hmm.
the evolution of humanity. And so we are at this pivotal point now. And as a hallmark, some of the qualities of being in transition are not being able to find our footing, not being able to find our grounding, confusion, sadness, anxiety. Things are not the same as they were. We're inundated with so much data, so much information at our fingertips now that I
Mm-hmm.
think people become very overwhelmed. So, eliminating that by saying, wait a second, there's something that I can tune in with. It doesn't cost me any money. It's not outside of me. It's not digital. It's my own soul that will direct me onto the correct pathway of least resistance and
Mm-hmm.
suffering by paying attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's another aspect of my work of mediumship to help people know that everyone has equal access to this guidance within themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question is right now there's so much tumult, so much chaos, so much overstimulation, overthinking, overworking. How do people begin to reorient themselves to this spiritual realm? Because it feels to me, certainly, and I know you wrote this book post kind of COVID, that was really what this came out of, that there's this need for turning back to the more quiet, sacred spaces.
I believe there is. The other point, and I mentioned this, well, in several of my books, is a connection with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to understand spirit, God, higher source, it doesn't matter what term you give that. I always say turn to nature, because nature operates in a perfection, except where humans have interfered with it.
Right.
But it just operates naturally. And I believe that, in modern life, we have become very disconnected. That's why I think, forest bathing and people getting out and, just walking or going to parks and so forth, that's becoming more popular. I'm seeing more of that on social media. And, people realizing there's something here in nature that's very healing.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's actually not at all funny. But what you said last night, I was walking back from the beach, and I walk up these set of stairs and through what I call the enchanted forest, because it's this beautiful forest that leads back to the path to my house. And I was walking with a couple, and we saw a firefly light up, and they said, do you realize that we might be the last generation to see fireflies? She had just heard about this or our kids would be the last generation because of all the light pollution. They have evolutionary adapted to that, which means that they don't need their light anymore. And I was just thinking how tragic that is, because there's something as kids about there's something about fireflies when you're a kid that just makes life seem magical. And there's something about when you see them in what I call this enchanted forest, when they're lighting up, when it's so dark and the only thing you see are these little lights that make life seem magical. And it's just heartbreaking to me that where our evolution has taken us is that we are, in many ways, destroying these natural experiences of really spirituality. Like in those moments, you're just in awe of the beauty of that.
I was feeling a little bit sad when you said that. Yeah. And, nature's going to continue, and animals will continue.
Mm-hmm.
Most animals. There are species that are extinct now because of the intervention of humans extinguishing their life. I have the utmost reverence for nature and animals. To me, they operate in pure, spirituality, because they don't think about yesterday and worry about the economy and,
Right, they're fully present.
They are fully present. Most people, I'm sure, in your audience can identify, if they have dogs. You leave for an hour and the dog will greet you when you come home as if, oh my gosh, you've been gone so long. But they just know that you've returned and that they're greeting you in love. So we have so much to learn from nature and from animals. And I really believe that the so-called, let's call it a cure for being overloaded and so forth, is to shuttle that down for a period of time and go outside. Listen to nothing. Listen to the birds singing. And, without thinking about, well, gee, I wonder what type of bird that is, but just listening, and that still alertness and presence brings you into the domain of your soul. That's another good way to connect is being out in nature.
Well, Carole, thank you again for another incredible episode and for really helping us tease through the intuition piece. I think that's so important for people to hear. If people are interested in learning more about your work like I said earlier, our previous episode was on Akashic Records reading, so you might want to go back and listen to that if you're interested in having your Akashic Records read. And you did a reading for me that was posted on the show, so people could hear that as well. Where can they find you? Where can they learn about your work? Just, can you give us some insight into
On
that?
the web, Soul Visions, that's plural, soulvisions.net. There you will find a lot of information about mediumship. All of my books are available there. Even as the author, I cannot beat Amazon's prices. However, you will not get an autographed copy through Amazon. You can get that through my website. But all of the books are through my publisher, collectiveinc.com, and also amazon.com. They're also on Kindle. And my Facebook page is facebook.com/soulmedium. And then Instagram, I forget that right now, but it's on it's on my website right there on the homepage.
Perfect. Well, Carole, thank you again for your time, for your wisdom, and for continuing to show us how to connect with our own souls. It's so important in this time to come back to our spiritual selves. And I'm grateful again to be in your presence and to learn from you. So thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.